Today we're going to be looking at how to set up our interaction system we made in the last tutorial to work in VR, both as a ranged system and through grabbing. This is, just a heads up, a follow-up to a tutorial I released a couple days ago. If you haven't seen that, you can click up there right now. But without further ado, let's begin. Alright, first thing, let's go over what changed from last time. I've made a couple tweaks to our interactable component, but they were just visual, so I didn't really want to bog us down by going through them. Regardless, if you would like to start with the same code I'm starting with, you will find an updated version of the interactable code down below in the description. Basically what I've done here is I've added a boolean to track if we're hovering and if we're interacting, and then this update visuals function, which instead of just applying and unapplying the overlay map when we hover, now on begin play we apply the overlay map and we update whether that is visible or not, or whether it's interacting or not. And when it's not interacting, it's assumed to be hovering. The material, by the way, pretty simple, a little bit more complicated than last time. We have a hover color and an interact color, and we lerp between them based on interacting. So when interacting is 0, we'll use the hover color or the A input of the lerp. When interacting is 1, we'll use the B input of the lerp or the interact color. Then we're also multiplying our Fresnel by this visible scalar parameter, so that when it's 1, the hover outline will be visible, and when it's 0, it won't be. Now, are there more efficient ways to do this? For sure. Does this work for our purposes? Absolutely. So, in our VR pond, we're going to start with the behavior of hovering when your hand is close and interacting when you grab. So, to start that, we have to know when our hands are close, and the easiest way to do that is with an overlap sphere. So let's grab our left grip, and for those of you who don't know, the location of the motion controllers doesn't actually matter in the viewport, so I like to just kind of spread them out, make it a little bit easier to work. And then on our left grip, you're going to add a sphere collision. We'll call this L overlap. Reset its location so it's actually centered on the left grip. Do the same for the right hand. This is going to be R overlap and recenter. Now these are pretty big, so let's fix that next. In our construction script, I'm going to set the sphere radius of both our right overlap and our left overlap. If you didn't know, there are a lot of nodes where you can feed them to components, and it will apply that node to both components. Really handy. And also, thankfully, Epic gives us the grab radius from grip position variable by default. This is how the get grab component code determines whether an actor is close enough to be grabbed, so it works just fine for our purposes to reuse it here. Now, if I save, see that's gotten considerably smaller. Alright, so next we can detect if we are overlapping something, which is as easy as right-clicking and do on add on component overlap event. And we're going to get component on the other actor by class for an interactable component. And let's validate that. Basically what we're saying is if the other actor has a component or has the interactive component, this is going to be valid. If they don't, then it's not going to be valid. If it is valid, we want to call hover and do nothing on not valid. Now on end overlap, I do the exact same code here, except here we're going to call unhover. And this is going to be the exact same thing for the left hand. I have both of those at once here, begin and end. like lining things up in the grid. It makes my brain happy. So we're going to do that. Copy, paste. That. That. Drag that. And drag that. Now this should work pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure our game mode is set to XR game mode. Put on my headset here. Grab the controllers. And let's preview in VR. So now when my hand overlaps one of the cubes, it is blue. Now we do have the problem here. Hang on, that cube is technically in my desk. Let me grab this cube over here. When we overlap with this hand, but then we stop overlapping with the other hand, it calls the unhover. Because when we originally built the hover code, we were only checking for one thing. But now we have two hands that can be hovering. So we need to account for that. Thankfully, accounting for that's pretty simple. We're gonna add two more booleans. Let's call them right hovering and left hovering. And as inputs to our hover and unhover events, we are going to add the hand that is hovering, and we're going to use E controller hand. Same thing for unhover. This is a built-in enumerator variable or enumerator type that comes with the VR template that simply has all of the possible hands or whatever have you that a motion controller could be bound to. So we are going to change this just a little bit here. We're going to do a sequence out of this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at, so I want these to go on top, make our code a little bit cleaner. Check left hovering, and check right hovering. Now, what we can do here is we are going to assign in hovering, or is hovering, to right or left. So this will be true if either the right hand or the left hand is hovering. Then for the unhover, we are simply going to do not. And so this will now be true, or this will... Oh, my bad. We want this to be false. So we don't need a not. We can just plug that in. So the only way that this will be false is if neither the right hand or the left hand is hovering. Let's go ahead and hook up this little sequence node there. Except we need to change it so that on unhover, whichever hand has called the unhover event, we set that hand to false. Move some of this just a little bit. And now, compile, thank you. Go into our pawn, and these are left, so we're going to make sure these are left. These are right, make sure that these are right. Let's test that out. So now I'm hovering to the other hand, and we're still hovering, but it stops when I stop hovering with both hands. Now, let's make it fire that interact, which we'll know by it turning orange when I grab it with either hand. So for this, we're actually going to utilize the grab component. And we're going to do that in the try grab function. So we are now in our grab component in the try grab function. So down here, this is where the grab component does a good amount of setup for various things related to the grab component. We play the haptics, we call the onGrab event or dispatch the onGrab event, and we assign the motion controller. For my purposes, I think this is probably a good place to hook up our interact as well. You might think differently. Feel free to put it elsewhere. The important thing is that it is somewhere in this chain after is helped is true. So first we need a way for the grab component to get a reference to the interactable component. So the grab component is going to live on the same actor as our interact component. So let's go ahead and drag this out. We're going to put a sequence node here. So after we cast to a primitive component and tell it to simulate physics, then we are going to get component, get child component, or sorry. Oh, sorry, this is the attach parent. We want the attach actor. Get owner will give us an actor reference for the actor this component is on. We can get component by class, get interactable, and oops, almost forgot to check if it is valid. Then we will promote variable and say interact comp. There we go. So now we have reference to the interactable. So in try grab, we're going to do a validated get on that interactable component. If it is valid, we are going to call interact start. Now the one problem here is we won't really have an interact tick. We'll go ahead and hook that up if it's important. If it's not, then don't worry about it because it's going to be a little bit of faff to get that working. Or rather, if it's important for your functionality to have a ticking interact. Very similar on the is release. We only want to make sure we're calling this if is dropped is successfully called here. So we're going to do interact end. But make sure we call return even if we do not have a valid interact component. So now that should do the baseline of working. Let's go ahead and double check that. By simulating. So now when I grab you, it turns orange. Successful. And it stays orange even if I pass it in a hand. And then when I release it, it turns blue for a minute because we're hovering, and then it goes away. Fantastic. Now let's hook up that tick real quick, and we'll also add a toggleable Boolean config parameter that tells it to ignore interact components. Because sometimes when we grab a component and it has an interactable on it, we want that interactable will be triggered by something different. We don't want the grab component to always trigger interactable, let's say. This is a handy comment from Epic here saying tick is disabled in class defaults. So the easiest way to do this kind of try grab, try release is to use a custom timer. I'm going to create a custom event here. And we'll call this interact tick. this. Every time the interact tick fires, if the interact component is valid, we're going to call interact tick. In try grab, let's move our return node over a little bit. And we're going to, I forget where it's start or create or make. So we're going to type in timer. There we go. Set timer by event. And because we're in a function, we can't get a direct reference to the event. What we can do is we can get a delegate to it. Set to looping. And max once per frame is, probably have that on because that's what tick does. And we'll set its time to very small. Move this to a variable. Call this interact tick timer. And then we'll call return. And now on our try release, let's go ahead and make this comment a little bit smaller, and then we'll move all this code down just so we're not running into it. We are going to grab the reference to our timer, clear and invalidate the timer by handle. This will stop the timer from firing. Compile and save. And just to show that that is working, let's go into our small cube. In the event graph, you can see that I have unhooked that color functionality. So we're just going to put that over here for now. And if on start it is false, meaning it's getting a tick, then we'll just do a print string and we'll just print hello, just because we want some kind of visual indicator that this is working. Oh, and before I forget, let's also add that functionality that ignores this if we don't care. We're going to add another Boolean into our grab component that is should interact on grab. And we want this to be true by default. So we're going to put this branch here. And now this interact start and interact end only trigger if it's true. If it's false, we will go directly to our return. Let's do the same thing in our try grab now. Move this over, put our branch in, move this over a little bit so we're not running into that haptics node, and hook that in. So now we're going to say that this red cube is not going to interact on grab. So we'll go into its grab component, and let's grab to expose that, make it instance editable there. And now we can tell the red cube to not interact on grab, whereas all the other cubes will. Back in the headset once more. And we see that the interact code is working here. While I have it held, it's ticking hello. When I release, it stops. Fantastic. And now I will see with this one, the hover still works, but it's not changing color to orange when I'm grabbing it, and we don't see the hello firing, meaning that our Boolean for only interacting when we tell it to, oh, sorry, I put my mic there, I can't quite see, but our Boolean works. It only interacts on grab if we tell it to interact on grab. All right, so that's it for the hover logic. Now let's look into how we would set up that kind of ranged interact. So back in our XR pawn, we are going to add a tick. This is the most convenient way to do this. Is it the most efficient? No, probably not. Basically, we're going to, every tick, do a line trace from our hand or from our motion controller in the direction our motion controller is facing, out a certain unit and then basically just going to copy that kind of logic that we took from our first person in the last tutorial, where we get a reference to what we're currently hovering over in that hand. Oh, it's my head says hand tracking. Sorry, that's what was throwing me off there. It was hand tracking, and that was moving my cursor around. Let's move that out of the way. But yeah, we're just going to do a line trace to get what our hand is kind of looking at, quote unquote. If you want to be more efficient about this, you could get a really long cylinder or box collider, attach it to the hand, and just extend it really far, and then use the same kind of overlap logic that we're using. I'm going to use the tick just because it shows something a little bit different. So for our sequence, first we're going to handle the left hand. So make things simpler on myself. I'm going to go into our first person character, and we are just going to grab exactly this line trace code that we set up last time. One thing to note here, in our first person character, I'm just going to set this to, actually no, I didn't set up logic for right hand. We'll just leave it on left. It's fine. I don't care about the first person character. This is a VR tutorial. Back in our XR point. We are going to create a matching function. We'll set up that function in a minute. I think actually I know a better way to do that function that I should have probably showed in the last video. It's my bad. So I will do that instead of using this function. Anyways, this is going to be our left hand. So we want our left grip. Perfect. And we're going to trace 800 units. Now, the reason we were using the interactable component, get interactable component for the first person is because we were more concerned about multiple interaction components potentially being on the same actor. If that is a concern, use this paradigm. Use the basically this exact same loop and exact same logic we did here. I'm going to say it's not, because I kind of want to follow how grab components work for the most part. So instead of checking for interactable and all that jazz, what we're going to do is we're going to follow the logic that we did down here, and we're going to see if the actor has an interactable component on it and get if it's valid or not. So let's plug that in, hit actor, and then instead of a branch, we're going to do a is valid. Go ahead and create this variable. And then we're going to rename this to current interactable comp underscore left. And this is in fact the right, or the correct hand, I should say, already set up. We have left here. We will set this to this. And then we're going to do the same logic for our right hand. So change left grip to right grip. Oh, my bad. I should be using aims, not grips. That's my bad. Let's use left aim here. And right aim. My bad. Subtle difference there. Aim is a little bit more precise for the kind of thing we're doing than grip is. We're now change this to right. So current interactable, just gonna copy that down here. Current interactable comp right. Place that reference just by dragging it onto it. And then make sure this is all being set to right hand. Right. All right. So now our hover code should work for traces. Let's test that out. There we go. See, I'm kind of range selecting things. Fantastic. Now, let's add a way for us to interact with them. I'm just going to bind this to the bottom button on both controllers. So the X for my left hand and the A for my right hand. So to do this, let's go ahead and we're going to go into our, under XR framework, input actions. We're going to create a new input action. We're going to call this IA, and we'll have interact left, and copy paste, interact right. Save those. Now let's go into our IMC default mapping context, which is annoying because IMC default is also what we're using for the first person and third person. I do wish Epic would name these by default a little bit different, like IMC default VR would be great, but we're working with what we have. Just don't be confused by that. And we're going to add a mapping for interact left. And that's going to be our Oculus Touch. What did I say is on the left controller there? That is our X button. So we want to make sure that we're doing an X press and not an X touch. X press is when you push the button down. X touch is just when you set your finger on it. And then we're going to do the same for interact right. Except this is going to be a button. Oculus Touch. Fine, I'll go looking for it. Thank you, Epic. Oculus, oh, excuse me. Oculus Touch R A press. Great. Close the first person character, just so we don't get confused. Back in our VR pawn, we're now going to do looking for that input action. There we go. IA interact right. And then also IA underscore interact left. I lied, I do actually want my first person character back because I'm going to steal my own code again. Copy that. This is, again, just propagating the tick, the start and end from our input actions. Exactly the same thing we're going to do in VR. Triggered, started, canceled, completed. This is for our right hand. So we're going to use our right interactable, drag and drop, drag and drop, drag and drop. Let's give all these a little more breathing room. Same thing down here. Except these are going to be for the left hand. All right, so now let's test if that worked. Should be everything. Now I'm pressing the button, and we see it's interacting. We can also see that hello tick. Fantastic. And there we go. That is how to set up the interaction system we built last time to work with VR, both with kind of ranged interactions and with graph-based interactions. That's something I might also recommend. In these, you can add an input that is ranged. That could be a Boolean. Oop, not a byte. Boolean. We would do that for all of them. That way, it would allow you to handle whether you're interacting from afar or interacting close. Maybe you want them to do slightly different things. Good little suggestion. Beyond the scope of today, but let me know if that'd be something you're interested in seeing in the future. I have a couple more VR tutorials planned. Next one should be on doing a kind of pull to walk movement system, just my favorite VR movement system. But please let me know if there's anything else you'd be interested in seeing down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell for more tutorials. Go ahead and give the video a like if you found this tutorial useful. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.